Hello and welcome to another edition of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I am your host. I am the Big Rican, and today is Wednesday, November the 18th, 2020. So I know I've been doing a lot of live stuff. I know it's been a lot of pre and post game or pregame with both the Browns and the Buckeyes. I've had the couple of live events with Tone and Alex to wrap up the baseball season, but I want to get back into a regular weekly show as well. So you're going to get to hear from me 3 times this week. This episode today on Wednesday, moving Big Rican Buckeye pregame to Friday night. It will not be a live event. It will just be my pregame show for Saturday, as I have to work on Saturday, so I won't be out of work till between 12 and 1, and game kicks off at noon. So I want to get you guys my thoughts on Indiana before the game starts. And then, of course, Sunday morning, probably around 11 again, we'll do Browns pregame as the Browns take on the Philadelphia Eagles this week. So I wanted to come to you tonight for a couple different reasons. One, tonight is the NBA draft. Big surprise to me, who forgot about it for a while. But I really just cover the Cavs. I don't worry about college basketball other than, I know 2 years ago, my first video was actually me picking the bracket in pen. So the Cavs at number 5 tonight took Isaac Okoro out of Auburn, a wing player, athletic, decent outside shot. He'll fit in nicely with the Cavaliers, especially with Andre Drummond re-upping with the Cavaliers, exercising his option to stay. I don't believe Tristan Thompson will be there next year. The jury's out on Kevin Love, and of course we needed more players to go around Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, both of whom I adore, especially with what happened with Kevin Porter and being arrested this week on a weapons charge. So that's the one. We're going to start with that, obviously. So good luck to Isaac. Welcome to Cleveland. I hope you pay off the dividends that we hope you will, and we can get back to the playoffs and back in the hunt. But this is going to be a very baseball-centric show for a couple of reasons. One, the Hall of Fame ballot is out, and for the first time since I've been doing this, since 2018, I'm actually going to do a Hall of Fame ballot for you guys right on the air here. And secondly, had some big news at a Mets camp today. We'll get into that as the final thing, because I'm going to go deep, because now you're going to hear from me about the new owner. You're going to hear from me about what he's been saying on social media. I'm going to give what I think are my keys to the hot stove season and what the outlook could mean for the Mets if they do the things I want them to going into 2021. It was announced today that hopefully MLB is expecting fans back in the ballparks for 2021. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So anyways, let's get into the Hall of Fame ballot. Now, as people may know, being the psychotic Met fan that I am with my David Wright t-shirt, my Mets hat, I have been to Hall of Fame induction in Cooperstown. I went in 2016 when Mike Piazza became just the second Met to ever go into the Hall of Fame in a Mets cap. So that was a pretty cool day. There were 50,000 people there. 45,000 of them were Met fans, making the trek up to the leather stocking region of New York and to witness the greatest hitting catcher of all time chose us. He chose to go in as a member of the Mets, so we were there to support him. So this year, obviously, the Hall of Fame ceremony will be a lot bigger because 2020 did not happen due to COVID. So the Hall of Fame ballot is out. I have already done this. I have done it in pen. I will talk a little bit about each one of my votes. I did not vote for 10 people. I did not believe that there were 10 people on this list that were worthy of induction into Cooperstown. So here it is. The Big Rican Hall of Fame ballot. You see my check marks there. Done in blue ink. And I'll start at the top. The first player I voted for was Todd Helton. The argument is he played in Colorado. My argument is he put up the numbers. And if it was only Colorado, Helton would have hit a lot more home runs than he did. But this is a guy who, as a left-handed hitter, paced baseball for many, many years. He deserves recognition and going into the Hall of Fame. That's me personally. In the center, I actually had 4 players. One is more of a defensive guy, and that's Torrey Hunter. I believe he was one of the preeminent defensive center fielders of his generation. The tail end of the Ken Griffey generation into the Mike Trout generation. Not bad with the bat, but more known for his defense. The second person is Jeff Kent, the greatest hitting second baseman of all time. Having just lost Joe Morgan, I think this one will bring more attention to Jeff Kent and the numbers he put up. He has the most home runs ever by a second baseman. I believe he has the most extra base hits as well. Kent should be in the Hall of Fame. As much as it pains me because of how crap he was when he was with the Mets. The next one is one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time, and someone who, when I was a kid, people told me I looked like. Andy Pettitte of the New York Yankees and the Houston Astros. Listen, when the Yankees went on their run in the mid-90s, there was no big game pitcher like Andy Pettitte for them. He got a win every time he needed to, and he did great stuff on the mound in the postseason, winning championships with the Yankees in 96, 98, 99, 2000, and 2009. Next is maybe the best third baseman in between Mike Schmidt and David Wright, and that is Scott Rowland. The Philadelphia Philly, St. Louis Cardinal, Cincinnati Red, possibly the second best defensive third baseman of all time behind Brooks Robinson. But Rowland was an absolute monster at the hot corner. He was phenomenal. His contributions as a third baseman cannot be ignored, and I believe he deserves to be on the ballot to get in. So I'm going to do the next two, and I'm going to get to the last one, and it's one that is very close to my heart. Now, the next guy is Gary Sheffield. I'm sorry, but there are certain numbers in baseball that are automatically, you go in, and that one of them is 500 home runs. Sheffield became the only player to ever hit his 500th home run with the New York Mets when he did it in 2009. But Gary's association with the Mets goes a lot deeper than that, because Gary Sheffield is the nephew of the guy whose birthday it was the other day. None other than Dwight Eugene Gooden, the doctor himself, is Gary Sheffield's uncle. The next one is Billy Wagner, maybe the most dominant left-handed closer of all time. Billy Wagner was a small guy who threw really hard. Made most of his hay with Houston. Spent some time with Philadelphia, the New York Mets, and the Boston Red Sox before hanging him up. Listen, Wagner was great when he was with the Mets. I loved every bit of him. And watching him throw as hard as he did was awesome. So I think he deserves recognition. And the last one, because this goes in alphabetical order, is a guy who I personally believe should have been in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot, no question. And that is maybe, no, you know what? Not maybe. This is my opinion, and I'm going to say it. The greatest defensive shortstop to ever play the game, and that is Omar Vizquel. I got to watch live when I lived in Cleveland from 93 through 2000. The greatest shortstop who ever lived, in my opinion. Ozzie was great. Omar was better. I'm going to catch a lot of flack for that, but unfortunately, I don't care. The greatest defensive infield of all time is the 1999 New York Mets of Robin Ventura, Ray Ordonez, Edgardo Alfonso, and John Olerud. The greatest middle infield of all time was the Cleveland Indians of Omar Vizquel and Roberto Alomar. Unreal. Not just with the bat. Alomar's a Hall of Famer, and a lot of it's his offensive stats. With the glove, these two could not be touched. I saw them make plays that just, I don't know how they were made. Alomar going out on the grass to get a ground ball and hit Jim Thome on the run. Alomar going up the middle, diving for a ball, flipping it with the glove. Omar coming across the bag barehanded and throwing a guy out by 20 feet. He was poetry in motion. Softest hands you ever saw. Was a main cog on two teams that went to the World Series and a third that really should have. So Omar Vizquel is, in my opinion, a Hall of Famer. I don't think it should be a question. But unfortunately, I'm not one of the baseball writers of America, and I don't have a vote. But if I had a vote, that would be my list. Some notable omissions. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling. Bonds and Clemens take care of themselves. Let me talk about Curt Schilling a little bit. Curt Schilling made his bones as one of the best postseason pitchers of any generation. Unfortunately, I'm of the school that if you're going to get in there, see, Andy Pettitte won 200 games. I'm almost positive Andy Pettitte won a bunch of games, but Andy Pettitte was the main cog in a rotation that was phenomenal during the regular season and the postseason. He put up great numbers in a bunch of seasons for the Yankees, in his couple seasons in Houston. He put up great numbers in the regular season. Schilling's regular seasons outside of strikeouts were never really that impressive to me. His postseasons were outstanding, but his regular seasons weren't that impressive to me. So he's borderline to me anyway. He will probably end up getting in, but me personally, I wouldn't do it. But that's just me. So now that we've covered the Hall of Fame, just a little reaction on some of the awards. Congratulations to Trevor Bauer on winning the 2020 National League Cy Young Award. I still think Jacob deGrom had just as good a year, but Bauer made it count. He got Cincinnati in the playoffs. Congratulations to the American League MVP, and a shout out to my buddy Alex for Jose Abreu winning the MVP. Listen, the award season was what we thought it was. Managers of the Year, Don Mattingly and Kevin Cash were great choices. The MVPs. Jose Abreu winning in the American League was a big one. Of course, Chicago gets to the World Series. Gets to the playoffs for the first time since 2005. Freddie Freeman winning the MVP award in the National League was outstanding for a couple of different reasons. If you saw the live episode I did with Alex and Tone, you know I thought Freddie Freeman should win it, and especially this year because he beat COVID, then came back and was an outstanding offensive performer, and is always a great glove at first base. Now that the season is over, we had some time to wrap. Just reflecting on what 2020 meant to me as a baseball fan, it just meant to me that baseball will always be able to continue. This was a season that not a lot of people saw them being able to play. This was a season that everything was important. Every game had extreme importance. And in 162, you don't see that because there are a couple games you can give away and it won't really matter much. These 60, there was no giving games away. So hats off to Major League Baseball on a very successful 2020. Congratulations to the Dodgers on winning the World Series. Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Rays on winning their second pennant. And really showing us that you don't need to break the bank on the payroll to get to the World Series. So speaking of breaking the bank, let's discuss the team that I adore like no other team on the planet, and that is the New York Mets. We have a new owner, and for the first time in many years, the Mets are going to be massive players in the free agent and trade market in this offseason for a couple of different reasons. One, yes, we have a new owner. He's going to want to make a splash. He also now has the financial means because if you think about it, he's not a baseball owner who lost money to COVID. He didn't have to worry about not filling seats and making money. He has a day job, as he said in his press conference. His press conference on Zoom with the New York media was everything you needed to hear if you were a Met fan. He is a Met fan. He talked about going to the Polo Grounds in 1963. He talked about winning the World Series as a Met fan in 1969. He wants to bring a championship to the Mets fans. He did this because he's a fan and because he wants to win for the fans. And he's got $14 billion in the bank. Wish I had $14 billion in the bank. I'd have bought the Mets too. In all seriousness, he is going to bring a business acumen to the Mets organization that they have not had for a long time. But he made a very smart move, and that is bringing Sandy Alderson back as the president of the team. Sandy and his guys are going to run the day-to-day baseball operations. Steve Cohen said, I got a job. This is an investment. Sandy and the guys are going to run the team. I'm going to have input, obviously, because I'm the owner, but Sandy and his team are going to run the team. There's a lot of talk that the GM of the Cleveland Indians is next up to be the Mets president of baseball operations, which leads to a lot of speculation that I'm going to get into next. The Mets have been tied to every free agent, whether it's Trevor Bauer, George Springer, Jackie Bradley, Ozuna, JT Realmuto. But I'm going to put my GM hat on. So I'm going to flip this one backwards. And now I'm going to play GM of the New York Mets for 2021. I don't have to make a ton of moves. A splash is needed because we have a new owner, but I don't need to make a ton of moves. The first domino fell today with the announcement that Robinson Cano has been suspended for the entire 2021 season for a second positive PED test. Now, let's start here. First things first, I wanted them to trade Robinson Cano this offseason to begin with. Whether Steve Cohen bought the team, the Wilpons kept it, Brody still had his job, wouldn't have mattered. I wanted Cano gone. Not that he wasn't productive last year. But the Mets have young players who are losing playing time because of his contract. You need to play the kids. Cano's suspension now frees up another $24 million in payroll for this team. Now we can play Monopoly. And we can spend Steve Cohen's money like it's Monopoly money. Here's how. The first order of business for the new GM of the New York Mets is to send J.D. Davis, Brandon Nimmo, Ahmed Rosario, Ronnie Mauricio, and another player to the Cleveland Indians for Francisco Lindor, contingent upon Lindor signing a long-term extension. Do not make this deal unless he signs the extension. This could be the Johan Santana deal, which, other than injury, Santana delivered. The 2008 phenomenal season, pitched well into 2009, had the injury, pitched pretty good in 2010 to start the year, had another injury, missed all of 11, came back in 12, was great until he threw the no-hitter, and then, of course, overdid it in the no-hitter, and we lost him for good after that. But Santana did in 2008 what he was brought to do. Lindor is younger than Santana was, because Johan Santana and I are the same age. He's literally 2.5 months younger than me. Santana in 2008, he was 29 when they made that move. Or he turned 29. March 31st, I believe, is Santana's birthday. He turned 29 during the season. Francisco Lindor's 26. You can sign Frankie Lindor to a 10-year deal and not feel concerned about it. There are a lot of people who disagree with me. They think I'm crazy. They don't want to sign Lindor. I'm sorry, he's 27. He just turned 27 on Saturday. So it's still 2 years younger, and he's not a pitcher. He's coming into his prime. Bring Lindor in. I don't care if it's 5 for 6 for 1. Get Francisco Lindor, because now you've just made your team better. Here's how you've made your team better. You can move Andres Jimenez to second base, or even third. Play Jeff McNeil at the other one. So your infield on opening day looks like this. Pete Alonso at first, Jeff McNeil at second, Francisco Lindor at short, and Andres Jimenez at third. Or flip it. Play McNeil at third, Andres Jimenez at short. If you don't have to give him up in the deal. Second thing it does. By trading Brandon Nimmo and J.D. Davis, it also opens left field or right field for Dominic Smith to play every day. Smith, who had a phenomenal 2020, but an injury-plagued 2019, I think he's ready to come into his own, and he's under control for a few more years. Other than moving Pete Alonso to third and putting Smith at first, that's the move to make sure Dom Smith is in the lineup every day. A left-handed power bat to go with Alonso, and Michael Conforto, who I think is going to be extended by this regime as well. So you make the Lindor move. That's move 1. Move 2 is you bring in one of his former teammates, and that is you sign Trevor Bauer to whatever contract he wants. Here's why. Noah Syndergaard will be back at some point in time, early, probably May, June next year. He had his Tommy John in March. He has been all over social media. He's already thrown off a mound, and he's throwing bullets. You would then move Noah Syndergaard to the number 3 slot in the rotation. Noah Syndergaard's an ace. He could pitch out of the 1. But in the 1, you have the best pitcher in all of Major League Baseball in Jacob deGrom. You put Trevor Bauer in the 2. Stroman has already re-upped. He's the 3 until Syndergaard comes back. You have options at 4 and 5, whether it's David Peterson, Seth Lugo, whether you keep Steven Matz. The Mets have options. I've heard them tied to Charlie Morton. I would love that. That veteran presence, the ground ball pitcher who just got Tampa to a World Series, and the innings weren't taxed like they would be in a normal year going to a World Series because you didn't play as many games. I like the Charlie Morton move, but that's more under the radar. That's a complimentary move. I think Trevor Bauer needs to be a New York Met. He loves them. He has sung the praises of the Mets since Steve Cohen took over and had his press conference. The third and final move, there's 2 more moves, and this is going to sound very, very selfish. And I get that. But this is the first year I can make these predictions. I can tell people what I want them to do, and there's a chance that it's going to get done. The Mets need a center fielder. It's non-negotiable. They need a center fielder. They need one who can go and get it, but also one who can supply some pop with the bat. If he's available, George Springer's the best spot here because then George can hit leadoff. If he's not, the move is Jackie Bradley Jr. I don't think the Red Sox are going to keep him. I think Bradley sees the writing on the wall that the Red Sox are going to rebuild, especially after trading Mookie Betts. Bringing Bradley in, it solidifies center field defensively. It puts a good bat you can mix up in the lineup somewhere. If I'm being greedy, I want George Springer. But if I'm being smart, it's Jackie Bradley. Because Bradley's not going to cost you as much. Whereas you have a lot of money to spend this offseason because of what you had. The Mets basically have an extra $5.1 million laying around because if you take Stroman's contract, which is $18.9, with Cano's being removed, it's a $5.1 million swing for the Mets. That'll get you Charlie Morton. As much as I would love George Springer, and there's the connection with being from Connecticut, I think Jackie Bradley is going to be the move for the Mets to play center field. Which means you can now take Michael Conforto and Dominic Smith and move one to left, one to right, whichever they're going to do better defensively. Take spring training to find that. If I had to guess, Conforto's going to play left and Dom Smith's going to play right. I just think that makes more sense. The final move is if you have the money, go get JT Realmuto. He is one of the better catchers in the game. He is not Mike Piazza. Do not give him $200 million. He's not worth $200 million. If he's not available, James McCann from the Chicago White Sox will be available. Roberto Perez, who was with the Indians, is also available. So if you're stopgapping for a year or two, you have those guys available. Yadier Molina has said he wants to stay playing. There's going to be a lot of options on the free agent market. If I had my way, it would be James McCann. I like the way he receives. He's a decent hitter. He's good defensively. He's got a decent arm. The Mets in these last few years have really suffered defensively for shortcomings at almost every position. Adding Lindor, adding a center fielder like Jackie Bradley, keeping Andres Jimenez and putting him at second base, no offense to Jeff McNeil. Bringing in a James McCann or a JT Realmuto. Now you have that up-the-middle defense that championship baseball is won on. First things first, the Mets need a front office. And I don't like that they're dragging their feet like this. They need a front office. They need to find guys who are going to fill these roles and get the job done and get players on this team. So if the Mets get what I want, and let's say it's Bauer, it's McCann, Jackie Bradley, and Francisco Lindor. Opening day 2021 will depend on one if the DH is there. Because if the DH is there, I think you platoon Dom Smith and Pete Alonso at first base. Sometimes. But you're playing them in the outfield. So the Met lineup on opening day, Polar Bear at first, Jimenez at second, Francisco Lindor at short, Jeff McNeil at third, Dom Smith in left, Bradley in center, Conforto in right. Yeah, James McCann behind the plate. I like that move better. McCann behind the dish, and then, of course, McCann is catching Jacob deGrom on opening day. I don't care if Trevor Bauer's a Met. I don't care that he won the Cy Young. He knows for a fact that Jacob deGrom is the ace of the staff, and that's that. They need help in the bullpen, but I think they can get away with not getting as much help as people think they do. Chasen Shreve to come back, I think, is a must. Justin Wilson to come back, I also believe, is a must. Need to keep getting inside Edwin Diaz's head because he had a great season. He just blew big games, not just whatever. I like what Sandy Alderson said in the press conference. He believes Luis Rojas will be the manager on opening day. He explained to him that, you know what, this is what we think. I don't see, but we got to leave the door open. And Rojas, of course, being a baseball guy his whole life, he understands that. Rojas has such a good rapport with the core of this team, with Alonso, with deGrom, with Dom Smith, with Conforto, because he's been in the Mets system for a lot of years. So I think that'd be a smart thing for them to keep him there. I think Hefner did a decent job with the pitching staff last year. Chili Davis, I believe, should be back. Excuse me. As the hitting instructor, hopefully he'll be able to be with the team at all times. Look, the Mets have a bright future, and it starts at the top, and it starts with Steve Cohen. He has already said he's going to bring back Old Timers Day, which I think is great. To see guys like Piazza, I'd bring Ventura back, and Todd Zeile, and Ronnie, and get Hernandez to play at first base for a couple innings, if for nothing else than to just run his mouth. This is the first time in a long time that we can sit back and say, okay, we've got a guy on the top level here that's one of us. He's a Met fan. He gets it. He understands it. He wants to win. His family goes to games and sits behind home plate. He sat in the nosebleeds at Shea, and he went to the Polo Grounds. This guy's been down with this team since day one. He's been a minority owner, so he knows the organization from top to bottom. I think Sandy's going to rebuild the farm system, something he did very well when he took over in 2010 through the 2015 season. Think about it this way. Sandy Alderson is responsible for Syndergaard, deGrom, Alonso, Smith, Conforto. I can keep going. Basically, the entire core of the 2015 National League champions and guys who are still there, Sandy Alderson's responsible for bringing into the Mets organization and watching them thrive. So, here's to 2021. I will have a Hot Stove wrap-up edition with Tone and Alex. I'll talk to the boys about when they want to come on, but it's going to be farther into the winter. As I mentioned, Friday night, I will post the Big Rican Buckeye pregame. It will not be a live event like it usually is on Saturdays, as I have stuff going on, and then got to get the episode up because I have to leave early on Saturday morning to go to work. Sunday morning, 11 o'clock, Big Rican Browns pregame live. Dive into what happened last week, and then, of course, preview Philadelphia and Cleveland. I am heavily working on the 100th episode, the LeBron versus Michael Jordan debate. I want to put this out there now. I would love to take questions for that episode. I would love to hear people's opinion on both sides of that argument, and then I'll give you my side of the argument. That's to come in the next several weeks. As always, Big Rican is a proud member of the TimeSkew Podcast Network and can be found at timeskew.com. The Big Rican on Sports podcast can be found on Google, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. On YouTube, Big Rican on Sports. Facebook, Big Rican on Sports. Twitter, at Big Rican on Sport. And then, of course, Instagram, which is really just the links to everything, at Big Rican on Sports. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I will come again to you Friday night to talk about the game against Indiana, which will be the Buckeyes' biggest test this season. And then we will discuss on Sunday morning Browns and Philly. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Let's go Mets.